Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 9, Episode 5. It's time for Q&A. We got lots of A's. We have lots of Q's to A. I'll get an A on this intro. I have a whole host. As a host, I have a host of questions today to answer, which is super cool. So I really want to thank everybody who submitted stuff. I got like a little bit of everything, which is great. I have SpeakPipe audio submissions. I have comments from YouTube, text from Instagram, audio submissions, video submissions, a little bit of everything. And that's super fun. So we're going to go through those. And I really appreciate the time that everyone took to send something in, because it's very hard to do a Q&A episode without that. But even more so, it's like so much of what gets sent in is just really kind and thoughtful and awesome. And I always look forward to the Q&A episodes, and to be honest, I have to sort of restrain myself from doing more of them because it is really fun. So we're going to dive into that today. But before we do that, let's talk about a little bit of gear. We'll talk about gear in a lot of the questions. But the gear that I'm using right now, I'm using the blue Sona this week for this episode. It's been a while since I've used this one because we've been trying out so many other mics. But, I love the blue Sona. It's running into the Rodecaster Pro II, and I'm trying something a little different. It's on the Broadcaster preset, which is one of Rode's microphones, not just like a preset for someone who is a broadcaster. I really like the presets in the Rodecaster Pro II. You can dial in your own stuff and make your own, and I've done that, but I've really found the presets to be a great place to start, and in some cases, just a place to stay. Like, they're good enough to just keep using. And I found for the Sona that the Broadcaster preset does the best job of giving the cleanest, quietest signal, like plenty of signal noise. Not noise. Wow. All these terms, you can hear the mic just fine, but you don't hear the like background hiss or self noise, I guess would be the term for that. So I've been really liking that. And it was hard for me not to go back to the Lewitt 440 this week because I really like that one. And, I've been using it a little bit since I've gotten it. But I want to make sure to branch out and spread things out. The thing with the 440, the 240 and the 440 are both such amazing sounding microphones. But in the podcast and the videos that I've done so far with the 440, to me, it sounds shockingly quiet. It's kind of insane. So I'm excited to play with that more. I do believe I've got a Rode NT1 5th generation on the way. I was just going to order it, and then someone from Rode reached out and said they were going to send one. So I figured, hey, I'll save some money and wait to order it. But I haven't gotten one yet, haven't used one yet. And I think they might also be sending the XDM 100, which is one of their new USB microphones. I'm very excited for that because I have not used it, but it sounds pretty amazing. Seems like it's a USB Procaster, which is awesome. So that's what I'm using today, the blue Sona running into the Rodecaster Pro II. I really love the Sona. It's a great microphone. And we're going to jump right into questions. We're going to go from the ones that I'm most likely to screw up playing back to the ones that I'm least likely. So we're going to start with like the video submissions, then the voice submissions, and then the text submissions. I love them all. So please, if you ever want to send something, send whatever you want. I love hearing voices. Even though this is an audio only episode, I love being able to see people when they're talking. It's kind of cool if you do a video submission. Those are just the ones that I tend to hit the wrong button sometimes when I'm playing it back. So we're going to start off video submission from Drew Hoyle. So Drew, you're up. Take it away.
Hey, Tom. How's it going? Hope you and Heather are doing well. I want to start this off by just saying that thank you for introducing me into the world of not only videography, making YouTube videos, making podcasts, but also for photography as well. If it wasn't for your suggestions for a camera, for better video, when we were all together in the Just Create More community, I don't think that I actually would have gotten into photography, which has completely enveloped my life so warmly, so amazingly. So yeah, my question, have you ever felt those imposter syndrome feelings? And I guess, how did you work through those? Or if you still have them, how do you work through those? And any advice you could give me is always massively appreciated. All right, well, that's it. Thanks again, Tom. I hope you all are doing well, you and Heather. And I'll talk to y'all later.
Alrighty. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. Always nice to see and hear from you. That was a video submission that Drew sent in to Tom at enthusiasmproject.com. So you got to hear him, but I got to see him. It was like we were in the room together. So first, I want to say thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. I've enjoyed getting to meet and interact with people over the years of doing YouTube and podcasts and all that stuff. And Drew's someone who was super active when we were doing the couples table and has always just been so kind and supportive. So I'm glad that that's been able to be a mutual, two-way street. That's awesome. And I'm really honored to have played a role in helping you get connected with photography and people who help you get inspired by photography, because your photos are amazing. Honestly, looking through the stuff that you post, it really looks like someone who's been doing this for a very long time, and that's super cool. And I'm really, really glad that you're having fun with it. It's when you find something like that, and trust me, I get photo, video, camera stuff that you just connect with in a big way. It changes everything, and it can really be such a good source of joy and positivity in your life. But I definitely also understand the idea of imposter syndrome. So what I'll say from my own experience is that I think it is something that is very normal. It's definitely something I have dealt with and still deal with in a bunch of ways. And I don't have any solutions. I don't have any surefire ways to fix it, but I can definitely just share my thoughts on it and some things that have sort of helped me. I think contextually it kind of depends on what kind of imposter syndrome it is. So for example, when it comes to, cameras, audio, video production, I know that I'm pretty skilled at that. I know that I have knowledge, I have experience, I'm capable, but I will still get imposter syndrome, all the time. I will always feel like maybe what I'm doing is not the best or as good as somebody else's, or maybe, this is going to be the time that it turns out someone discovers I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think that that's normal. I think that that's probably preferable to feeling like, no, I'm perfect. Everything I make's amazing, and I'll never find anything that I don't already know everything about. That's probably a worse attitude to have. And so in a way, I almost feel like imposter syndrome can be a good thing to help keep you in check for trying to get better, not feeling overconfident, because that's, very dangerous. And that also closes you off from learning new things. So it can kind of be utilized. There have been times in the past where at previous jobs where I had to interview applicants, or even as a teacher, I'd have to interview students for, clubs and organizations or scholarships or something. And sometimes I would have students apologize for being nervous or job applicants, people would apologize for being nervous. And for the most part, I would always tell them, I don't mind that you're nervous at all, because it shows me that you care about this. If you didn't care about this, you wouldn't be nervous, you wouldn't be shaking. The fact that you're doing that means that this is important to you. And I want this position, this scholarship, this whatever, to go to someone to whom it's important. And I think imposter syndrome can kind of have that sort of same function. It's an unpleasant thing to feel, but it can also be used to keep you humble in a way, or questing for knowledge maybe is a better way to do it. So that's in professional life. There's also personal things. So, last week or a couple weeks ago, talked about hockey and learning that. And that's all something that's super new to me. Same with learning to fly. Those are all things that are very, very new to me. And so I very much can feel like an imposter or a poser in situations, I feel kind of goofy sometimes going to the ice rink and I have, a brand new pair of skates, and then I see someone in rental skates that's just destroying the ice in a way that I'll never be able to. And I'm over here in much nicer skates. I'm going to try not to fall and hurt myself. And, it feels like an imposter, but in those cases, it comes from lack of experience, very obviously. And that's when it just helps me to remember that no one actually cares. No one is giving any second thought to anything that I'm doing. And if they are, it probably doesn't matter. or it's probably not negative. Like the number of times I've thought, oh man, here comes this amazing ice skater that's going to tell me like get off the ice, and they just go like, oh, you should, try bending your knees this way, or lacing your skates up this way, like just giving a helpful tip or something. And it turns out they're great. And if there was someone who was a jerk about it, that's probably not someone who's worth spending time on anyway. So that's a situation when you're doing something new where you have zero experience, and it's easy to feel like an imposter. But I think it's good to remember that most people don't care and aren't paying attention to you. If it's something that you do have some level of skill set and some level of experience in, I think it's good to just use that feeling to push yourself to keep getting better and learning more, but also remembering that just because you feel that way doesn't mean that you are an imposter, or that you don't actually know anything. That's because you do. All right. Next, we have another video submission, so I'll be able to see it. You'll be able to hear it. And this comes from Steve Martin. Not who you're thinking, but equally as awesome. So I definitely did a double take when I saw the name in my inbox, but this is from a UK-based photographer named Steve Martin. So take it away, Steve. Oh, wait, let me turn the volume down. Now take it away, Steve.
Hey, Tom. I am Steve. I'm based in the UK, and I'm mainly a photographer. But recently I've been getting more into YouTube, and I've got a channel, My Photography Journey, which has just hit 150 subscribers, which I'm so pleased about. And it makes everything seem real. It's brilliant. Thank you for all your help and advice over the years. And I just wanted to send a quick question. This is basically my setup, but I don't know what to do next. Do I add in a second camera? Do I upgrade my lighting? So at the moment, I've got a Samsung Q9U sat on a Rode PSA 1 Plus into a Rodecaster Pro II. And I'm filming on my Nikon Z5 with a 38mm 1.8 lens, which I really like. And yeah, it was my first real camera, and it's done me so well. But yeah, I don't know what to do next. I just love playing with all these toys. Love the photography side of it, love the video side of it. I use Resolve for my editing, and yeah, even though I use Resolve, your tips on Final Cut have been great. So thank you for those. So this is a big thank you. And yeah, in there was a question somewhere: lights or camera next? I have no idea. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Steve, very much. I appreciate that. So ultimately, the question comes down to lights or camera next. I will just spoil that by saying lights. But before that, I want to say, if you were listening to this episode, you only got to hear it. I think you sound great. The Q9U running the Rodecaster, to me, sounds amazing on your voice. I love that. Thank you for the kind words. Congrats on 150 on your channel. That first 100 is so difficult and feels so impossible that then you hit that, and getting past that it's kind of crazy. So you see the number keep going, and then I'm going to guess, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess you reached 150 a lot quicker than you reached 100, because that typically is how it works. And it does definitely make it seem real, because you're like, oh, people I don't know are finding this stuff and watching it. So congrats. I'm so happy to hear that you're having fun and enjoying the experience of, you have a background in photography, but also then learning more about the video side of things. The fact that you're having fun with it means everything else will just be smooth sailing, because it makes the learning fun and you're not forcing yourself to do something like that. So let's talk about some of your questions. You did pop a few notes. There was like text that popped up on screen during the video that the listeners couldn't hear. One of them was, you said 38mm lens, but you made a note that it's the 35mm lens. And one of them was about your framing. Do you have too much headroom? And I think it was headroom. There's a thing that popped up that said fill this space. So I don't know if you meant in the background, but the one thing I would say that could be fixed immediately is the shot I saw did have a little bit too much headroom, like blank space above your head. It's all very much personal preference, but going back to the old reliable rule of thirds in photography, right now, if I were to take your shot and put like the rule of thirds in it, your eyes are dead in the center. But that means that it's like the top of your head is kind of touching that top third line, the horizontal line. So that top chunk, that top third is kind of blank. So I would just fill that up, either zoom in or tilt the camera down a little bit to fill that in, and just adjusting the framing right there I mean, it looks great as is. Like, I don't, I'm only being nitpicky because you asked, but it looks great as is. But that's something that you could fix instantly. But asking something like, where do I go next? Do I need a second camera? Second camera, I have mine and I use it and I love it, but that's a personal choice because I like the way that it looks, and it also really helps me with editing, and it can also help show things and illustrate things more effectively. So those are the reasons I use it. I wouldn't use a second camera just for the sake of using a second camera because, you're doubling up your workflow essentially. So if you have a reason, if there's something that one camera is like preventing you from doing, then a second camera could really help. Like I said, it does help with editing because you always have this other shot to cut to. It can help cover up jump cuts, just make things a little more visually interesting sometimes. But I don't know that I would, unless you have if you have a second camera that's just hanging out and it'll go well with the Nikon that you're using now, which looks amazing, by the way, then yeah, give it a try. But if you're thinking of going out and buying a second camera to be the second camera, I might hold off on that unless you really, really have a specific need for it. And that's where I think lighting is a good answer. Your shot looks great, but again, being super critical because you asked, the one thing I noticed is it almost feels a little flat. It almost looks not like log footage, but a little bit flat. So I feel like there could be a little more contrast in there. I would probably, add a little more color saturation, but that's because I like everything to look like a unicorn barfed on it or something. So that might just be personal preference. But a little more contrast and a little more, I guess depth might be the word. And I think you could do that with lighting. Right now, everything is very evenly lit, which is kind of what I do too. I like high key lighting. I don't use a lot of moody lighting in my YouTube stuff. Not that I don't love that. I really like bright, high key lighting. And in your case, it's kind of the same, but there's very little differentiation between the amount of light on you and the amount of light in the background. So maybe finding a way to just dim out the background a little bit, and then even that might be enough where you pop out a little bit more. I don't think there's always the magic of a hair light or a backlight. I love it. Some people aren't fans of it, but if you can position a light just right behind, you're a photographer, I'm sure light right behind you, from up above pointing back down on, the back of your head and your shoulders, that separation and that little rim of light, I think it always looks so good, and you don't need anything crazy fancy to do that. You don't need super expensive lighting or anything, but I think investing in lighting is always a smart thing to do. So I would start there. You'll have a shot that looks absolutely amazing, and then you can see about, if you want to do cameras or another camera or anything like that, or, as long as you're having fun with it, that's really the ultimate answer. And I'm really happy that the Final Cut tutorials and info have been helpful for Resolve. I know there's a lot of overlap between those programs, but there's also a lot of differences. So I'm glad that some of the basic techniques and things have been the same. So thank you so much, Steve, for sending that in. Those are the two video submissions I have today. And both of them were sent to tom@enthusiasmproject.com just as attachments. So if you want to, actually different attachments. Steve sent his through iCloud and Drew sent his as just a Google Drive file. But that seems to be the best way if you want to send a video submission. Both of these looked so good. It really makes me sad that there's not a video version of this. So I might have to reevaluate my thinking about video podcasting. We'll see. I don't know. I feel like, dang it, it'd be really nice if that was a video thing. So you're making me reconsider things. Anyway, that's neither here nor there now. But you guys both looked and sounded great. Now we're going to move over to SpeakPipe. So what that is, SpeakPipe is just the service that I use to make it easy to submit audio suggestions. I totally stole this from Bandrew at Podcastage because it's what he used on the Bandrew Says podcast. And I was paying for it for a while, and then I stopped, and it still works. So I think paying for it just lets you customize the colors and branding, but I don't know, seems to work fine for free. So what this is if you go to my website, if you go to himynameistom.com and you scroll down a little bit, there's a thing that says submit a question for a podcast. And right there, you can just click record and record your question. You don't need to attach any files or do anything else. You can just use, you could literally be on your phone and just talking into your phone. You could, use your computer's built-in microphone, or if you got your Rodecaster and your microphone all set up, you could use that. You could attach files if you want to, but it makes it really, really easy to submit voice questions. So I have several of those that were done through SpeakPipe. So we're just going to start from there and go in. So first one is from Homesick Mac. Always a pleasure to hear Mac on the. I was going to make a pun, but I couldn't do it. Anyway, take it away, Homesick Mac.
Tom, another angle to this jack of all trades, master of some. If you have several different areas of interest and try to do all of those, of course, that's one of the scenarios. But if I just choose one, music, and executing music as a musician, it's like I choose blues, but there are zillions of different styles within blues. I can just name country blues, Texas blues, Mississippi blues, jump blues, West Coast blues, you name it. So a master of some is kind of possible, right? So I'm within acoustic blues. But only Americana, let's say, as a genre, has got Zydeco, blues, Cajun, alternative country, and so on. So, yeah, that's another angle to it. And then, speaking of getting old or age, every age is the right age to do things, to learn, to pay the dues, to get paid, rewards for long-time commitments in life and doing things and stuff. I started working out at age of 50. I've never felt better. I'm like 63 now. So there are many angles to this, and it's a very, very interesting podcast you made there. All right. Cheers.
All righty. Thanks, Mac. I appreciate that. I know there wasn't really a question there, but there's stuff I wanted to touch on. Mac was largely responding to the podcast from 2 weeks ago about Jack of all trades, master of none, where I was talking about just so many different interests in things and how to learn and how to navigate being interested in so many things, knowing that you can probably never be absolutely amazing at everything. Probably. Mac, though, is an amazing musician. I would say magician, maybe, but also musician. And the thing that you touched on there is right, where it's like everything gets broken down. And I started thinking of like fractals, where you zoom in on something and then you see it's made of smaller parts. You zoom in and those are made of smaller. So like, you could say, oh, I'm only going to focus on one thing, music. But yeah, within music, there's so many different genres, so many different instruments, styles, outlets for that's almost infinite just in that one thing, even though it's all just music, which sounds like one thing. Photo, video is the same. Oh, I'm just going to do audio video production. Okay, well, that's lighting and microphones and audio editing and video and lenses and photography and set design and writing and editing. Like there's just, it never ends really. So everything, I think ultimately, yeah, if you want to focus on things, it probably is possible over time to become a master of some, maybe not everything, but maybe more than one thing. Maybe multiple things could definitely happen. And I appreciate, you mentioned age, which is Heather and I, we used to say this thing that was sort of sarcastic. It's almost like how I started when I was teaching. I started listening to Skrillex, ironically, like I would use it as like ridiculous music in class or in projects to like make things seem silly. And then because I started listening to it ironically, then I started actually liking it genuinely. I feel like a while ago, Heather and I used to say, don't let age be your cage. And we would just sort of like say that sarcastically anytime we saw somebody who seemed like they were being limited by their age or whatever. Don't let age be your cage. And then now it's something that we say like really meaningfully and genuinely, because it is so scary how quickly time flies, and it is easy to feel like, well, I'm past that point, or I can't do this, or I'm too old for that. And, like we talked about in the previous episode, in some cases that might be true. I'll probably never be prom king because I graduated high school 20 years ago. So it's very unlikely that that's going to happen because that part is over. But, limiting yourself based on age is a really dangerous thing to do. And I've known so many people who really their reason for not doing something is just their age. It's not how they feel. It's not what they're interested in. It's nothing like that. It's just, well, I'm 40, I'm 60, I'm 70. I can't do that. Why though? There's really no reason other than just some arbitrary number, your age, which is, Mac, you said you're 63. that's different for everybody. I've known people who are, like you're in amazing shape, you're a musician, you're super active. To me, that's a very young 63. Like I wouldn't peg you as being that age. Whereas there's other people I've met who are 63 and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you like a great grandparent of somebody? It's different for everybody. That sounds mean, but like there's so many things that go into your age that just the number itself is kind of random and it's so different for everybody. And ultimately, you need to look at yourself and what you're interested in and what matters to you, not letting just some number dictate what you can and cannot do. This actually reminds me of a quote that I like. I didn't realize it was a Bible quote because I had only heard the second one, but the original quote is from 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. As someone who grew up Catholic, yeah, that's pretty much how I felt. But the quote I found, which maybe you've heard, is from C.S. Lewis that said, when I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. And I really like that because I think the first version, not to contradict, not trying to like go against the Bible, I don't want to get into that, but the original quote of, you become an adult and you put away childish things is how I feel like many people have lived their lives. Like the age limits what you're able to do or what you think you're able to do. But ultimately, I really like the C.S. Lewis version of, putting away childish things and then calling the fear of childishness and the desire to be grown up childish. Like the ability to just do what you want doesn't mean like, like what is it, like Peter Pan syndrome where you shirk all responsibilities and you're, that doesn't mean anything like that. Stuff tends to get taken to extremes, but the idea that if you're an adult and you want to do something and it's not hurting anyone else and it's not hurting yourself, go for it. Nothing else really matters what it is, because at a certain point, time's going to be up and you're not going to be able to do those things anymore. And you should definitely take advantage of that time while you have it. So thank you so much for that message, Mac. Next message is up from Shahi. I think I said that correctly. And this one, I'm excited to dive into this one. So take it away, Shahi.
Hey, Tom. My name is Shahe, and I live in California. I've been following your podcast and YouTube channel for several years now. Really appreciate your perspective and enjoy your content. I'm in a bit of a pickle, and I need some advice. In late 2020, when the Canon C70 was released, I bought it immediately. It seemed like the perfect camera for my particular needs, which was to make sort of talking head educational content as well as to record at church. And it's been great to me. I really love the C70. I love the picture it produces, the quality, the ease of use, and all that. But I'm in a conundrum now where I really need something for a B camera. I need that angle now in some of the content that I'm trying to produce. And there's just not a good option. I don't want to spend another $5,500 for a second C70. I thought maybe the R5C was going to be that camera for me, but it doesn't have C-Log 2, and the battery life is terrible. And so it's just not workable for my situation. So I'm thinking about making the big switch to Sony, and an FX6 and FX3 paired together would be perfect, but I'm terrified of selling my C70 and my current RF lenses. So any advice for me? What do you think I should do?
Alrighty, Shahe, thank you for that. I apologize for mispronouncing your name twice before the message started. I literally I tried to practice getting names right before recording, and I was like, I'm going to nail this, and then I got it wrong twice, so I apologize for that. But thank you so much for the message. This is such a fascinating topic that I'm really glad that we get to touch on today, because I think a lot of people have questions like this, not necessarily specifically from Canon to Sony, although that's a very, very common one, but switching from one camera system to another. It's very common, especially in the world of YouTube, to see so many people who are switching, and I think you're touching on some of the more subtle points, the nuances that comes with switching a camera system. It's not as easy as just, well, I'll just sell this one, buy that one, and then I'm done. If you've been doing this a while, you have so much infrastructure for your existing system that the idea of switching goes so far beyond just some features that are available in another camera. So I have kind of a couple things to look at here. One would be I want to look at what it would mean for you not to switch, and then I want to look at what it would mean for you to switch. So you brought up a really interesting point that I wasn't that aware of until recently, and that is the incompatibility of certain cameras within Canon's own ecosystem. I didn't really realize this, but you mentioned you have the C70 and you love it, which I haven't used it, but I've heard everyone loves the C70 who has it. But you use C-Log 2, and so getting another camera might not have C-Log 2, and you don't want to spend the very high price to get a second C70 as a B camera. Obviously, if money were no issue, that would be the way to go. Just get the same camera twice and you're good. But when the camera's that expensive and you're looking for a B camera that's not going to be used as often, it makes sense that might not be the way to go. And then, Canon has all this. They came out with some new cameras. With the R8, is that the full frame, the more affordable full frame camera? Of course, there's the R6, R5. There's all the Canon cameras, the mirrorless cameras that they keep expanding their lineup with. But not every camera has every picture profile and every option in there, which is something I didn't realize. So even though you're within the same system, it's not necessarily going to be super easy to match your footage if you use a specific picture profile that the camera doesn't have, which is so frustrating. And that kind of thing is ultimately why I ended up switching from Canon. I love my Canon cameras, but there were certain things I needed. It wasn't C-Log 2 in my case. It was, I wanted full frame 4K with good autofocus and overheating. And this was 3 years ago, so time was a little, the capabilities were a little different. But I really loved being part of the Canon ecosystem. I loved my cameras. I had everything all set up. And the idea of switching was just so incredibly overwhelming that I really wanted to hang on and just come on, Canon, give me the thing that I need and then I can stick here. And they just didn't in my case. And so ultimately that's what led to my switch. So I guess this was supposed to be my argument for staying with Canon, but it didn't sound that way. What I would say is renting cameras is an amazing thing to help answer some of these questions. If you haven't tried any of the other options out in person, you can go to somewhere like Lens Rentals and rent a camera and then play with the footage from that camera, see how it fits into your workflow, see how it matches your C70 the way that you like it, and you might be able to find some option in Canon's lineup because they do have a ton of mirrorless cameras now. You might be able to find something in there that ends up working really well for you, and that could solve quite a few problems. So to stay with Canon, I would recommend renting some of the cameras, not even the ones that you're interested in, just any of the ones that check some of the main boxes, So I know the C70 isn't full frame. Maybe you're using the speed booster, but the other cameras like the FX6, FX3 that you mentioned, R5C, those are all full frame cameras. So maybe if you literally just kind of went down and looked at all of Canon's full frame offerings, saw which ones, even if they don't have C-Log 2, which ones are able to meet your other needs, rent them and see how the footage matches, see how the camera fits in your workflow. And you might end up finding something that you didn't know was the right camera for you. And then you don't have to leave your RF lenses and your whole infrastructure and your ecosystem. The thing about Sony, though, is the flexibility is fantastic. I think all of their mirrorless cameras, maybe there's some at the real low end, but I don't think so. I think all of them have all of the S-Logs, all of the same picture profiles. So even though you are using different sensors throughout the lineup, matching the different cameras is so easy. Even between me, I have the FX3 and A7S3. Those have the exact same sensor, but then I also have the A7 IV, which is a different sensor. It is no problem to match those cameras at all. It's super duper easy. And I'm not even the best. I'm by far from the best. I'm by far not the best colorist out there. So Sony, I think, has that kind of built into their ecosystem, the idea that you're going to want to mix and match cameras. And that ties in with what I think Sony's philosophy is when it comes to their customers. And that is, we want you to buy our cameras. They don't care which camera you buy. If you buy the ZV-E10 or if you buy the FX6, They just want you to buy a Sony camera because I think they know that if you buy one, chances are then you'll buy more and you'll buy the lenses and you'll do all that. Canon's thing kind of always seems to be like, we want you to buy the most expensive Canon camera we can possibly get you to buy. And so everything is kind of designed to push you like one model up to get what you need. But it can be very frustrating if the needs of any one model don't specifically line up with what you need, because then you find yourself overpaying while still not getting everything that you want. And that's a very frustrating place to be. The other thing with Sony is the E-mount is super versatile. Every Sony lens fits on every Sony camera, is kind of the short of it. There are lenses designed for their crop cameras. So if you put those on a full frame camera, you're going to have vignetting and stuff, and you might need to crop in on the lens. But every E-mount lens fits on every E-mount camera. You have all of the Sigma third-party lenses, all the Tamron. You have third-party lenses with autofocus, which Canon bizarrely is not doing with the RF. They are not letting other companies make RF autofocus lenses, which is such a bummer because like Sigma makes some of my favorite lenses ever. And unless you want to adapt an EF lens, which is fine, and I did that for years on my EOS R, but the problem with that is EF lenses, especially for video, some of them tend to be very loud with autofocus. And so I didn't realize that I was living with the clicking, the in my audio for a long time until I used the quiet lens that didn't have that. And I realized, wow, that's a pretty huge difference right there. And some of the EF lenses, because they are older, even though optically they're great, the autofocus motors in those lenses aren't super fast, or, you know, they're not as nice as newer ones as the RF ones are. So it sucks that Canon is limiting that. And with Sony, you do get Sigma, and you also get Tamron, which I am very quickly starting to have a love affair with Tamron lenses. They're great in the price and So you have a lot of options with Sony. It's going to make matching your footage really easy. You spoke specifically about the FX6 and the FX3. Again, it's the same sensor. So matching those two cameras is going to be amazing. You're just going to end up with the FX6 being this big, super fully featured camera. I would personally love to have an FX6, but I truly have no need for it or budget for it. But everything that camera can do, plus variable built-in NDs, so not just NDs that like are one or the other and flip in front of the lens, but you turn on the ND and then you can do a variable adjustment to dial it in perfectly. That is phenomenal. Plus, I just love the form factor of that camera. But I also absolutely adore my FX3. That has been my main camera now for not 2 years, no, a year and a half solidly. And I bought that as my B camera, but it just became the main camera because the audio inputs are so great and the tally lights are really handy. The thing with Sony cameras is you will start to notice, wow, these LCD screens aren't as nice as my Canon cameras were in terms of resolution and stuff. But that's definitely something you can learn to live with. Just annoying. I've talked about that many times. So ultimately, switching to Sony is probably a thing that's going to open up more versatility for you, make it easier to match multiple cameras, but it is a really frustrating process. And I genuinely would kind of recommend, especially because you love the C70, seeing if there is a Canon camera out there that will work for you as a B cam, and renting is a good way to do that. I also really want to recommend a new podcast that I discovered. It's a new podcast, and I also recently discovered it, called 16 Stops. And it is a camera photo podcast by two of some of my favorite YouTube creators, by Josh Satin and Brandon Talbot. They each have multiple channels, which is kind of cool. They each have non-photo video related channels and then camera channels. And then they teamed up to do a podcast. And I love both of them because they're super nice guys who like just sort of naturally ooze positivity. Sounds kind of gross, but like every time I watch one of their videos or hear them talk, I just feel more like refreshed. I don't feel jaded. I don't feel negative. I love the way that they approach things. Josh is somebody who has kind of every camera system, Canon, Sony, Panasonic. I think Fuji might be in there too. And Brandon is mainly Canon. And the reason I bring this up is because their very first episode, they're only like 4 or 5 episodes in at this point. It's a podcast that's on YouTube, so it's all video versions. I'll put a link to the first episode in the show notes here. But the first episode is called "Why Is Everyone Switching to Sony?" And they talk about the trend on YouTube, but they also dive into the finer points of switching camera systems and a lot of the things that go into it, why it makes it so hard not to switch, and why sometimes even if it feels like that grass is going to be so much greener, it does make sense to stay where you are. I think when they recorded that episode, Brandon had just ordered an FX3. He had like the C70 R5C. And then a couple episodes later, he's like, I love this camera. It's amazing. I'm returning it, because as much as he loves the FX3, the cost of selling all his Canon gear, selling all those lenses, he's going to end up losing. He's not going to sell them for what he paid for them. And by the time he rebuys all of that in the Sony version, he's ultimately going to end up losing, in his case, many thousands of dollars, which just didn't work. And that's kind of something that happens with switching camera systems. Definitely happened to me. I had my Canon system. Fortunately, I guess I didn't have a ton of lenses. And so I knew I was going to take a hit with Sony. But I did sell one of my Canon EOS Rs, just kind of help fund that. And I completely got hosed on that deal. So that was a bummer. So I lost money for certain. And the turning point for me was I bought my Sony camera thinking I'm going to use both systems. And then after a while, I wanted to buy a new lens because Sirui was coming out with their 50 millimeter full frame anamorphic lens. And I thought that looked amazing and I really wanted it. And so I ordered it. And after I ordered it, I realized I didn't even consider ordering the Canon version. I just ordered the Sony version. It didn't even cross my mind to order the Canon version. And I thought, I think that means I might have switched camera systems kind of without realizing it. So that's a very long answer, but I wanted to kind of talk about it a little more in depth because there's so much more that goes into switching camera systems than I think people realize. And it can be very costly. And then there's also definitely a learning curve. Like, I'm sure that you're very fluent in the language of your C70 and the Canon ecosystem, and jumping into something new. It's not that it's impossible or that you won't get great results very quickly, but it's going to take a while before you start to feel like, okay, it's second nature to me how these cameras work. And that's tough. So renting cameras, though, definitely a thing to do. Even Sony, rent some Sonys. See how you like them if you haven't used them in person yet. And definitely check out the 16 Stops podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes here. That has become my driving companion over the past couple of weeks, and I've been enjoying that very much. All right, we have our last voice submission, which is from Gil. Gil, I'm filled to the gills with excitement to hear from Gil.
Hey, how's it going, Tom? This is Gil. I hope all is well. Last week's episode was pretty dope. I resonated with it a lot. I too was born in the 1900s, so the Mighty Ducks was a thing for me as a kid. I actually wanted to become a hockey player, and the first official sporting event that I ever attended was actually a Florida Panthers game. It was a hockey team down here in Florida, so that was pretty cool to hear. I'm not that big into sports now. I mean, not really. It's not really my thing. The last sport that I played was actually wrestling in high school, but that was pretty much it. But I wanted to ask you this. Outside of photography, podcasting, videography, and hockey, what is one hobby or side thing that you do on the side that you would love to turn to a side hustle or to make money out of? I would love to hear that. For me, it'll be drawing comics. I used to draw comics all the time. I still kind of do whenever I have a few seconds, just make a quick joke. But I would love to hear yours. What is something that you would love to turn to a side gig and not be something toxic, just something you just thoroughly enjoy doing and you just get paid off of it? I would love to hear it.
All right. Thanks, Gil. The short answer to your question is my side gig became my main gig. So now I don't know what to do because that was doing podcasts and making YouTube videos. And then it became the thing that is now my full-time job. So I'm just actually having an answer come to mind as I say this. But first, I want to say, please post more of your comics, or please share your comics. I want to see more of your comics, even if they're short and quick. My impulse to this question is that I don't really have anything I would want to monetize because everything else that I love, all my other interests, I definitely am either not skilled enough to be monetizable. And I don't mean that in I'm just being humble. I mean, no. It's fine. It's totally fine. I'm okay with this. Or I really don't want to. I'd be worried about monetizing it, taking away the joy of it. So I don't really have much there. I do have other goals. Like I would love to, like a friend and I kind of sort of had a band in high school, and that was always fun. I tried making music by myself, but I've always wanted to play in a band, not, like selling out arenas or anything, but just small local band would be really fun. That's definitely not a way to make money, but it's something that it's a more public use of a skill, I guess. And then something that's really far off, which I like, I'm almost hesitant to even mention because it's one of those things that like really feels like putting the cart before the horse. But in terms of aviation, learning to fly and stuff, I don't have any interest in doing that as like a job or anything or anything like that. But there is an organization called Angel Flight West. Well, mine is West. They're throughout the United States. So I think there's Angel Flight East or something, but mine is Angel Flight West. And what they do is they connect pilots with people who need non-emergency medical transportation. And so a lot of that is like, if someone lives in a remote town and they need to travel to get specific medical care, whether it's a one-time thing, like they need a surgery or, a diagnosis, or sometimes it's ongoing. Someone needs to travel once or twice a month to get some very specific treatment that they can't get where they're from. Angel Flight kind of coordinates that. And what they do, it's not emergency, so it's not like there's no rush there, but pilots donate their time to fly the people there. And sometimes it's multiple legs, so they might need one pilot to go pick the person up, go to one airport, another pilot at that airport to another airport. And it's all totally free for the people who need it. And the pilots also donate their time. They donate their fuel, they donate their plane time, their flying time. And then Angel Flight, the organization, is the one that organize it. They find the people, they vet the people, they schedule everything. They even organize some ground transportation too, like to and from airports, to and from hospitals and things. I would love to fly for that one day. I think that would be really, really cool. And, flying feels like such a privilege, and it does feel like an extravagance to, just to do all of that and be like, I'm just going to go up here and have fun, which there's nothing wrong with it, but being able to take that and do something positive with it and do something that really helps and is meaningful with it, I think would be really cool. And that's something I would love to do one day, but I got to finish my pilot's license first. And then I got to I think their minimum is like 100 hours or something. So I'm at like 15 hours. I'm not there yet. And it's probably a good idea. I don't know if they require you to have an instrument rating. So when I get my pilot's license, I will not be instrument rated, which means basically I'm not allowed to go into the clouds. I have to fly in essentially good weather conditions with high visibility. And if you're instrument rated, that's where you're certified to fly, with no visibility into clouds, through clouds, above clouds. So you can't see the ground, but you're flying there. Like, it's probably a safer thing to have. It opens up a lot more options, and it prevents you from being restricted by like quick weather changes and stuff. I don't know if they require that or not, but it feels like it's a good thing to have before doing something like that. So that's a long ways off, but that's a long-term goal. But again, that would only cost money, not make money. The thing that I was thinking though is because I was a teacher and then doing YouTube and stuff on the side, and then YouTube, my side thing, became my main thing, I do miss aspects of teaching. Not the like politics, not the day-to-day grind, like soul-crushing grind, but the actual connection, the getting to share knowledge, the getting to like spark interest and stuff with people. That really, I do miss that. And so finding some way to do that somehow that fits in with my schedule. I don't know if that's like workshops, classes, events, like, I don't know, the conferences, something where it's like some kind of teaching would be really fun. Like, just switch it, make teaching the side hustle and and this the main thing. But yeah, that's my I give long answers, but that's okay, right? You took the time to send a thing. I'm going to give a long answer. So those are all our voice submissions. Everything else is going to come from the YouTube community post to channel supporters, and YouTube and Patreon channel supporters, and the good old Instagram. So let's jump into YouTube. I had a few questions here. Here we go. Keith White. asks, is there any chance of the couples table making a comeback? I bet if we took a poll, the majority would favor it. And then Gil replied to that and said, all in favor say aye. This is interesting because this is a question that I've actually gotten a lot more than I expect. Heather and I did a weekly podcast live stream on her channel for 2 years called The Couples Table. And, a lot of people who listen to this podcast know that. But basically it was, we got married during the pandemic. So we ended up having our reception as a live stream. Like, we got married during the pandemic. Nothing was open. So we got married at a county office, which was actually a movie theater. The county had like commandeered the ticket booth at a movie theater. So that's where we got married. And we couldn't have a reception or anything. So later that day, we did a live stream together. And we were kind of joking that, like, when you go to a wedding reception, the couples always have the couple has their table and then everyone else is there. So it was like, this is the couple's table that we were sitting at and everyone was there. And that became we just kept doing those streams for 2 years. And it was really fun. But we stopped. When did we stop? We stopped a while ago. Maybe it was like last fall. Really, because what the most difficult thing came down to was coming up with new topics. We were trying to do new topics each week, and we felt like if we're just going to do a chat hangout, it's kind of a cop-out. And scheduling, because we did it at 1 p.m. every Thursday, and it did kind of get to a point where it's like, it's really sort of hard to schedule around this thing that's just fixed in the calendar all the time. And so we, because it's not just that 1 hour or hour and a half that the show takes, but there's preparation. It's the same thing with like a video podcast. It's not just, I should have a camera on now, but it's like, there's a whole new workflow that's being added into it. And so that was why we ended up stopping it. We've done a couple of like random episodes since then. I think they've been pre-recorded. We might have done like one stream. We've done like sort of randomly. Heather and I would both like to do it again in some way, but doing it like at this date and time just forever with no end in sight is a little scary. So I don't know what the mid compromise is, just sort of impromptu ones whenever. One thing we realized though, I'm so surprised by the number of people who say like, we wish you guys were doing that. Wish you guys were doing that again. I didn't think that was the case. And so that makes me feel really good. But it also shows me that, we didn't really need to necessarily always break our backs trying to find a topic to cover. We kind of could have just done the more casual episodes and the hangout episodes, because all of the people who were the regular, couples table community hangout folks, it was that discussion that was the best part. Even when we'd have a topic, it was fun to go into the topic, but then it was like, to me, the most enjoyable part was diving in with the chat and the comments and stuff. So I think we want to find a way. We admit to ourselves that maybe we don't need a dedicated topic each time. We can be a little more casual with it, and then finding a way to fold it into our schedule that works really well. Because the biggest benefit of doing it at that same time was people fit it into their schedules. If we're just kind of randomly doing it, it's very easy to miss. So figuring that out, but I would like it to make a comeback in some form or other. Next question is from Pete Breen. Of all the Sony cameras and lenses you own, which could you not live without? And no, none of them is not an option. Sony cameras and lenses. Yeah, the lens is an easy one. That's the 24 1.4. I love all the other ones, but for years, for like 5 years now, a 24 millimeter f1.4 has been my main lens. It was the Sigma when I was with Canon, and it's been the Sony since I've been with Sony. I love that focal length. I love f1.4. That's the lens that like pays the bills. So Sony 24 1.4. It's also dead silent autofocus. I love that. The camera, I'm always torn here. I'm going to go with the FX3 because my A7S III is sitting here. Look, you can hear me click a button on it. There, see, it's right. I'm holding the camera right now just to make this super authentic. The A7S III is the one that is the first one that I got. It's the one that I loved so much that then I made the leap fully to Sony. So in my mind, the A7S III is the main camera, and then the FX3 was the B camera, A7 IV is the C camera. But because of just the FX3, I do really like the form factor. I really love the tally lights, and the audio handle that comes with it, for me, is insanely great. Just being able to run XLR mics directly into the camera. I've even used like a cloud lifter and an SM7B with the FX3, and it works just fine. I love it. I love the form factor of that camera. You can buy a very similar audio module for cameras like the A7S III, but I love the robustness of the FX3's audio handle, and that's the audio handle I have. I don't have the other interface. So as much as I love my A7S III, as much as I feel bad because I feel like Sony, despite the popularity of this camera and it still being the current offering, it's like they've totally forgotten about it. It hasn't gotten a firmware update in ages, and that makes me sad. But I love my A7S III, but the FX3 is the one that and plus the fan. I live in the desert, so knowing it's never, ever, ever going to overheat, even though my A7S III never has, the FX3 is like the workhorse that I would trust. So FX3 24 1.4. From next question, Professor James Kerr Lindsay says, "Hi Tom, what's the best placement for a super cardioid mic? I have a new MKH50 and I rigged it under my camera straight in front of my mouth, and it caught some heavy plosives even with the foam shield. I've lowered it and adjusted the angle and it's much better, but would it be best to have it above the camera pointing down? If so, what would be the best way to do this? I don't have much space and it's hard to get another boom arm crammed in my small office. I have an FX3, but the XLR handle looks a little flimsy for this. Also, what proper shield would you recommend for this mic?" I can definitely offer some insight here because that's my boom mic of choice, the MKH50. Oh, I love that microphone. But it's so sensitive. It is actually kind of susceptible to plosives, even if it feels like it's at a distance. I'm sure you've heard some plosives in my videos because I'm always trying to get the mic as close as possible without being in the frame. And so ultimately what it comes down to is play with positioning. I'm trying to think because you're talking about rigging the microphone too. So what I always try to do with my MKH50, I've experimented personally with positioning the mic more vertically, like pointing downwards versus at more of an angle that's facing me directly. And I kind of can't tell which sounds best. And the reason for that is because where I'm recording, I have a desk and a computer monitor right in front of me, which are both very hard surfaces that sound waves bounce off of and reflect from. So the positioning of the mic, sometimes what you think would be best doesn't always deliver the best sound because it picks up some of these weird reflections and things. So in general, I did notice that I position the mic perfectly and it looks great, but then I tend to lean forward when I talk in my videos. So it looks like the mic's positioned well, and then I lean forward and I'm actually speaking kind of past the microphone. And so I've learned to position the mic for my actual speaking position that I really use and not what I think I use, which, believe it or not, they're not the same. Generally, I kind of have mine at a 45-degree angle above the camera, facing kind of pointed right towards my chest. And that seems to work pretty well. A great piece of advice, which sounds super simple, that I've gotten from two people. I've gotten it from Alan at Sound Speeds, and I've gotten it from one of the audio engineers from Sennheiser way before we ever even did anything together. Helped me figure out sound. And one of the things both of them suggested was to set up a camera on the side, or where you can see your whole setup, and then move your microphone in different positions, test it out in each of those positions, and then play back the video and see what sounds best. And then you will see what position sounds the best, and that's going to help you figure out. I know it sounds really simple, but it's very easy to not do that. It's very easy to only listen to the microphone sound samples and not have any evidence of where it's actually positioned there. So that's a great thing to do. As far as mounting it goes, I understand being cramped up. I don't know what tripod you're using, but a lot of tripods have 3/8 inch mounts on the side for handles and things. And you can attach some pretty cool boom arms in there. On my tripod, which is a pretty heavy duty Manfrotto one, it actually has a mount that has locating pin holes. So what I've been able to do is use an iFootage quick release that screws right in there. And because it has those two pins, it doesn't turn once it's in there. It's firmly locked in. And then I use an iFootage support rod. That's literally what it's called. It's called the support rod that attaches to that. And then the microphone goes on there, and it's a boom arm that is attached to my tripod head. And that works really well. There's probably a bunch of different ways to get this same basic thing where a boom arm of some kind is mounted directly to your tripod head. If you're using some kind of bigger, beefier tripod that could support it. I definitely wouldn't mount it towards the camera specifically. Even the FX3, the body has, 1/4-inch mounts in the metal body, which feel pretty sturdy, but that boom arm, I feel like it puts a lot of torque on those things. And so I like having it mounted on something else. But I would bet that if you look at your tripod head, or maybe we would even need a new tripod that has a tripod head that has different mounts into it, you could probably find a way to attach some kind of boom arm or some kind of articulating arm into that. And that way your camera and your microphone are on one stand, and that works really well. Of course, there's stuff like, definitely check out Caleb Pike's DSLR video shooter channel, because he's sort of famous now for, doing setups that are all based on one stand, where you have like a light and a camera and a microphone and a monitor, all just on like one C stand that rolls around. So maybe going that way and just building a custom one stand rig might be the way to go. So those are, I posted this a little late yesterday, so those are all the responses we got from YouTube and Patreon supporters. So now we will jump in to wrap things up on Instagram, if I can find the questions. There we go. So we have quite a few here. This is from, I'm going to definitely get some of these wrong. This is from Ule Scano. How many episodes do we need to start monetizing a podcast? Sort of. I don't know. I mean, technically you need like one episode, depending on your platform. You can add ads to anything. I think Anchor lets you put ads. Buzzsprout, I know, lets you play ads. I don't think there's any real barrier to that as far as I'm aware of. I don't do it, so I'm not 100% sure. And technically, if you're working with a sponsor or something, you could just get someone to sponsor you right from the beginning. I will say, though, the caveat there is that monetizing something does run the risk of changing your relationship with it, changing your perspective of it. And especially if you're starting out a podcast, I would get the thing up and running. I would make sure it's something you want to do, want to keep doing. Maybe you establish a listener base. And then from there, you might be able to think of ways to monetize or approach sponsors or something along those lines. Mark Kaiserman asks, how do you come up with video topics and ideas? What is a brainstorming session like? That is a great question. I've talked about it before, but I use Apple Notes for everything, the Notes app, which, could be Google Docs or anything. I love the Notes app because it translates from computer, iPad, phone. So wherever I'm at, as long as I have one of those devices, I can throw an idea there real quickly. I have one note document that is just ideas, and it's broken up into sort of like sections. So I have, potential titles for videos. I have a section of ideas for audio-related videos, video-related videos, podcasting-related videos, streaming, computer-related videos, tutorials, live stream ideas. So I sort of have this running document of ideas. So if it's time to make a video and I need to make a video and I have nothing, the well is dry, then I just go here and pick the one that seems the most exciting to me, or maybe the most relevant at the time. But otherwise, I kind of I pay attention to questions I get asked a lot. Once I get asked something repeatedly, it seems like that might be a good idea to make a video about it. I pay attention to things I'm interested in. I tend to go down YouTube rabbit holes. And if there's something that I'm like, wow, I'm spending a lot of time looking up videos about this specific thing, maybe that's a good topic for me. I do try to vary it between, I think my channel would do better if I leaned more specifically into like one thing. So like Mac earlier was talking about, like niches within niches, essentially. If I just did like audio production, or I just did microphones, or just did live streaming, I think the channel would do better, but I would get tired of just doing that. So I try to balance it out. Like, okay, here's a video about a microphone. Here's a video about a camera related thing. Here's a video about a streaming related thing. Maybe here's 2 microphone videos in a row, but then the third one is going to be a camera related thing, just to kind of remind people that like, I like to touch on all of these things. And so I try to be very aware of that when I'm choosing what video to make next. And then I just outline everything in the Notes app, and it works really well. The key is, if you have an idea that you're excited about, don't trust yourself to remember it the next day. Write it down, put it in an app, something, save that idea immediately. So the next day you can go, wait, what was my idea? And then you can jump there. And then as far as brainstorming and fleshing out the actual idea, I usually need to be doing something else. So I need to like be riding a bike or even just like doing yard work or something where my mind can wander. And that's usually when I come up with the actual like meat of the episode. Let's see here. Manny Rondon asks, do you still use Anchor? And Shure SM7B or PodMic, which should I get? I do not use Anchor. I've been using Buzzsprout for over 2 years, 2.5 years now. I really like Buzzsprout. Anchor is great though. I still recommend Anchor as a way to get started because it's free. And if you want to do a video podcast, there is, I don't know exactly how this all works, but you can submit your video podcast to Anchor and they will play it on Spotify because Spotify apparently supports video podcasting now. And then they will take the audio from that and put it in the other directories that you have your podcast listed. So that's kind of a cool workflow. And then if you wanted to, then you could take that same video file, upload it to YouTube, and have your video podcast on YouTube as well. So Anchor is a great place to start. I've talked about it before. It's just a personal thing. It's not like, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. I'm just not crazy about Spotify's approach to podcasting. I feel like they're more into walling things off rather than opening them up. The strength of podcasting is that it's been this open platform forever. And so that's why I went to Buzzsprout, because Buzzsprout is in line with that philosophy. But Anchor's a great resource. It's a great site. Totally recommend it, especially if you're just getting started. Between the SM7B or the PodMic, short answer, SM7B is a better sounding microphone, but it's also more expensive. The longer answer is to make sure that the microphone you get works on your voice. The SM7B tends to sound pretty good on just about everybody, but not every voice works with every microphone. And so looking at other options, and if we're talking about $100 microphone versus my mind went blank, a $400 microphone, there's a lot in there, right? Like that there's a lot of space in there that includes all kinds of other stuff like the Lewitt microphones, the Rode NT1, the blue Sona that I'm using right now. Like there are so many microphones in there that, maybe you don't want to just limit to those two options. So if you have a way to try out microphones, that's a way to go. Tim Cantrell asks, podcast cover design, should it be mostly text, generic graphic, photo of yourself? How to decide? Oh man, I like my podcast cover art now, which is it's actually a gift that my brother-in-law did a couple of years ago. He has a channel called Kev and Ram where he does a lot of like art and design stuff. And he was learning Blender, and so he made like this graphic of it's like an Animal Crossing character version of me in my studio, and I love it, and I love the details of it. And so I asked him if I could use it as podcast album artwork, and he said yes, and I love it. Prior to that was just things I had made myself, and I don't know if they were all that good, honestly, because when I look at what other podcasts have, they seem so much better. So you can see my cover art and see what that is, and I like it, and it works well for this podcast. But when I scroll through like podcast directories and I see the ones that catch my eye, they tend to be not unlike YouTube thumbnails, maybe a little more simple and have like a bold design element. It's kind of rare that I'll see something that's like super complex and has all kinds of stuff happening, but usually there's like a graphic or an image and some text, and that usually is what catches my eye. So that's probably, if I were to start from scratch, that's probably where I would go. Out of the Box asks, what's the hardest part about being a full-time video creator? I definitely need to owe a huge congratulations to Out of the Box, who's another local creator to me, who very recently, and has a crazy year on his channel, very recently passed the 100,000 subscriber mark, and that's amazing. So I hope you're submitting for your silver play button. Hardest part about being a full-time video creator, I would say, is never really knowing when to start and stop working. And I know that's probably a pretty common answer, but it's very scary to think about like, I'm just going to take time off. And for me, I ultimately end up doing at least a little bit of work every day. Like obviously Monday through Friday are usually more full than like Saturday or Sunday are. But sometimes I find myself like, okay, I worked half the day on Saturday, work for a couple hours on Sunday, and now it's Monday and I'm exhausted or not feeling well. Can I just take the day off, or am I falling behind? Like taking time off without feeling like you're falling behind, I have not cracked that code yet. So to me, that's very difficult. Whereas like coming from education, there's summer break, Christmas break, you're exhausted all the times. And like, despite people who think teachers get a lot of breaks, it's not quite what it seems, but there's very clear start and end points. This is the first day of school. This is the last day of school. Like, it's very black and white in that regard. And I had a hard time like adjusting from that. Let's see here. Heather Just Create asks, how are you so cool? I don't know. I would say that it comes from having the support of a super cool wife. Papa D Toxic asks, have you had problems with your Rodecaster Pro II? Mine had random pushing of smart pads. I have not had any problems with my Rodecaster Pro II. And I've had mine for close to a year because I was lucky enough to get it before it officially came out. So it's been great. I love the Rodecaster Pro II. Every once in a while, someone will leave me a comment or send me a message that says, like, I hate the Rodecaster, this button doesn't work, or this thing. It's supposed to work perfectly, and it is an expensive device. So I haven't had any problems with mine. Most of the people I know who use the Rodecaster Pro also haven't had problems with theirs, but sometimes problems pop up. And what I would say is Rode is a really good company, and the Rodecaster is really expensive. So if yours is not working perfectly, definitely reach out to Rode and get it taken care of. And they should provide some kind of warranty support or repair or replacement. They should take care of you. They have a very good reputation of doing that. Do not hesitate to just reach out to them because it should be working perfectly. And if it's not, something is wrong. Ryan McLaren asks, what drone do you use? I have the DJI, what is it? It's the Mini 3 Pro. It's not the Mavic because they reconfigured their things. The Mini 3 Pro is amazing. My first drone was the original Mavic, which I loved. And it still works and I still have it. It's just now, 6 years later, the image quality is not quite up there with what I would like it to be. And the setup process, connecting the phone and using the app, I hate that. I had the original Mavic Mini when it was called the Mavic Mini that I won from Potato Jet's YouTube channel, which was crazy. And that was a great drone. The image quality wasn't as good as the other Mavic, but it was so small and so easy to use that I ended up using it more. And I thought the image quality was pretty great. But I still had the same problem with that one where I just hated having to get out the phone, connect the phone. Like, it doesn't sound like much, but it's such a crummy workflow. So then last summer, I got the Mini 3 Pro with the remote, like the RC remote that has a screen built into it. And I love it. The drone is amazing. Like the stuff that it can do, the image quality is absurdly great. It's got the same super tiny form factor as the first Mini that I had, but there's no need for using a phone. I just turn on the remote and the thing is connected in seconds. So it's so easy. Like, it's one of those things where if I think, I should get a drone shot of this, I just can without thinking about it. Whereas in the past, it's always been like, that means I'm going to have to set up a bunch of stuff. And so this specific setup for me has reduced so much friction that now I use the drone. I'm able to use the drone more and more quickly. Although I gotta say, I haven't seen this and I haven't used it. My stepdad, who is in his 70s, last month got an Avata, an FPV drone, because he's been interested in FPV drones for years and wanted to learn how to do it. I've never used it. We don't live near each other, so I haven't been able to see it, but I've gotten updates on him, like practicing and training and learning to use the FPV drone. So it'd be really fun to check that out and use that. But I use the Mini 3 Pro, and I really do like it a lot. Gil, you're just popping up everywhere. We're so far 3 months into the year. How has it been for you? So far, it's been great. It's scary how fast time is going. Things are going quite well. I feel very confident creatively, all these new interests. The only thing that sucks right now is I've been doing all this stuff, been exercising like crazy, been taking ice skating lessons, skating a lot, doing like off ice shooting practice for hockey and stuff. And I've injured my knee just the other day. And the way that I injured my knee was not from any of those things, but it was after a hockey game that we went to see, not that we were playing it or anything. It was very cold, and so Heather and I were running through the parking lot to the car to get to the car quickly. I don't know what I did running. Something happened, and my knee is very painful and swollen, and I'm worried that I have a torn meniscus, which would be awful because that doesn't heal super quickly. So kind of sucks. Like all the stuff I want to do is very hard to do now. And I'm hoping that it heals quickly. So I've been sitting here with an elevated leg and a brace, and that sucks. So I'm hoping that gets good, because if that goes good, then 2023 means more of and diving full into all that stuff that I'm, really excited about. It's such a stupid injury, though. I have the dumbest injuries. Gilligan. Ha! Gilligan's Island here. Besides 32-bit, what other features would you love on a microphone? I mean, for me, it's I try to think if I combined the microphones that I have and like into the perfect mic, a lot of them are kind of perfect in their own way. I don't think there's a way for an XLR mic to have 32-bit audio, like, because that's a mixer interface digital thing that needs to have that. So I don't think you could put that in an XLR microphone. For me, it really comes down to like the sound quality. I've been able to solve the positioning problem with the Lewitts because of the adapter that I got. And I really love how clean and quiet those microphones are. So I'm leaning towards liking those a lot, but the positioning, it's still, I don't know. Yeah, so what other important things to have? Let's talk about this. Keep it simple. Good plosive rejection and low handling noise. A microphone that you can't touch because it's going to pick up everything isn't great. And a microphone that you have to be so careful about plosives and have, a windscreen and a pop filter and angle it away from your mouth just to get it to sound okay is never fun. So a microphone that you don't have to think about moving, like I'm moving the Blue Sona right now and it seems to be rejecting that noise very well. Microphone that you don't have to worry about touching and moving, and a microphone that you don't have to worry about plosives. It will happen from time to time, but not having to like totally freak out about it all the time is great. Carlos Miguel Goncalves asked, good Lord, what ways to host and spread a podcast in all platforms, but in Europe? So the beauty of open podcasting is your location on the earth doesn't matter. Any of the platforms. So I use Buzzsprout, but Anchor, any of the other podcasting hosts will let you submit your podcast to all of the major directories. And that's really the way to go. Obviously, you could do a video podcast on YouTube as well, if you want to have the YouTube reach. And I know YouTube is doing a lot with podcasting lately. I'm still trying to figure out how to understand it, so I don't have thoughts or opinions on that yet. But yeah, so ways to host and spread a podcast. Anchor's the great place to start because it's free. If you decide you want to change at some point, it's very easy to change hosts without disrupting, your subscription feed or anything for your listeners. That's what I did. And I love Buzzsprout. So if you want to invest in hosting, Buzzsprout is, I love them and I love everyone who's on the team at Buzzsprout. The last question, definitely one of my favorite Q&A questions, but a very serious one. This is from Jimmy E. asks, why is my cat so mean to me when I'm so nice to him? Well, I think that there's a mountain of possibilities, and I think it's a good thing to continue being nice to your cat and try to find the perfect solution, because having a bad relationship with your cat would definitely be a catastrophe. Oh, it's not the button I meant to press. That was the one I meant to press, but the other one was more appropriate. So there we go. Those are all of our cues. We've A'd every cue, and it only took almost 90 minutes, but that's fun. So I hope you enjoyed listening to these. I really want to thank again everyone who sent in questions, whether it be text, video, audio. It's all great. I love the mix and match of everything. That is this season's Q&A episode, but do not think that you need to wait till episode 5 of season 10. This is just a dedicated episode where we're only talking about questions the whole time. But I love it when we can have sort of a two-way dialogue on the podcast anytime. So please feel free to submit questions and stuff like that anytime that you want. When I do Q&A episodes, that's when I do like the Instagram thing and the YouTube posts where people can reply right there. But anytime you want, you can send an email to tom@enthusiasmproject.com. That's a great way too if you want to attach a video clip or a link to a video clip. I can include that there. Or you can attach an audio file. Obviously, the easiest way to then is to just go to himynameistom.com, scroll down, and then find a little thing where it says submit for a podcast, and you can just record something, or you can just send a text, not send a text, but submit a text question or comment to the email as well, tom@enthusiasmproject.com. And I try every week when they come in to make room in the episode for them. It can be related to the topic. It's it's always fun if I record an episode and then I have responses to that episode. That's cool. But it could also be something else. If you just have a question, if you want me to talk about something that there's not a dedicated episode for, feel free to send that in anytime. I really appreciate all the support. It's amazing that I can, within a few hours of saying, hey, I'm doing a podcast, anyone have any questions, that I have 90 minutes worth of questions to go through. That's like absurd. And I love it. And I'm really, really appreciative of that and of all the support. And it reminds me that, we're all real people communicating in some way, and people are listening to the podcast, and the person making the podcast listens to the people who are listening to it. It's very cool. And I love that. And I'm appreciative of it. And I hope that you know that. So thank you again for everything. I hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your week, and I will see you next time.